The American Revolution by Zach Street and Elias Quigg. In this video, we will be covering several topics such as events leading up to the war, a little bit on the origin of our country, a little bit on the war, women's and children's roles in the war, and important figures in the war. Part 1. A Country's Beginning. After the discovery of the new continent, North America, several countries such as Britain, Spain, and France were trying to get a hold of the new and unclaimed land. Eventually, the 13 colonies were founded by Britain, and then the colonies fell into the sights of the French, who wanted more than anything to get their hands on the new land. The French waged war on Britain over the land, and after the conflict, France and Britain were both broke and could not afford to buy any other land or supplies. After that, Britain owned most of the land discovered and was one of the supreme countries that had a presence in North America at that time. Rising. Since Britain founded the 13 colonies, they had complete control over the laws in the colonies. However, the colonists did not have a representative in the British Parliament, but the king was still taxing them and determining the tax without consent of the colonists. He also gave them no say in whether or not the laws and acts passed were fair, so the colonists were angered when they had to pay extra taxes on nearly everything shipped from Britain. Most of this was a result of Britain needing money so they could pay their war debt. When the colonies found out that King George III wouldn't let them pick a person to represent them in Congress, they were outraged. They were even more angry when the Tea Act was passed, and they couldn't do anything about it. So the First Continental Congress, the combined government of all colonies, wrote several letters to King George III to ask for several repeals of several laws and acts, but after a while he refused to change the laws. The colonists were more angered than ever.
A revolution. The colonists were beginning to rebel against their superiors. One notable example is from the colonists in Boston, Massachusetts, who upon the passing of the Tea Act organized a group of rebels called the Sons of Liberty. They then boarded an American transport ship that was carrying cargo from London to Boston and dumped all the tea on board into the ocean. Anyone who was found trying to take the tea was beaten up. The British responded to this by passing several intolerable acts which limited the rights of those in Boston and restricted self-governance of the whole state of Massachusetts. Many in Boston were furious, driving more and more people to join them in their cause. Part 4. The War. The American colonists and British soldiers both had their teeth bared as they charged toward each other during the Battle of Lexington and Concord, the first two battles of the Revolution. By this point in time, the American colonists had two choices: either stay with Britain and become loyalists, or side with the rebelling colonists and become patriots. The British wanted the rebellious spirit of the colonists to be killed, and the patriots weren't ready for an open assault. On March 5, 1770, British soldiers openly fired into a crowd of people who were throwing rocks and chunks of ice and hitting the soldiers with clubs. This was just one of the sparks that started the fire that was the American Revolution. The British were at an advantage, although they had to listen to the command of their king, who was across the world from them, and the Patriots had another advantage as well, because the French had come to aid the Patriots in battles. In the end, the Americans won their right to be an independent nation, and the British signed the Treaty of Paris, which signified that America was no longer 13 colonies, but one independent nation.
Children and women's roles in the war. Women and children are not credited enough for the things they did during the Revolution. One notable example is Margaret Cochrane Corbin, also known as Molly Pitcher, who took control of her husband's cannon when he collapsed. Some women took on traditional roles like cooks, seamstresses, nurses, and maids, but some took on other roles like secret soldiers or spies. They disguised themselves as men by cutting their hair and adopting more masculine names, and many women also served as spies, but it is not known how many. Children's lives were very different whenever they grew up during the Revolution, because they did not go to school except if they were rich. Their families could not usually afford to better their education if they were older than age 6 or 8. Some were taught to read, but many were not able to. Important and key figures of the Revolution. There were many people who contributed to the war effort, on or off the battlefield, on both sides. King George III was the king of the Loyalists and the British, and the man who was in charge of taxing the colonists with no reprieve. Patrick Henry was a man who strongly disagreed with the Stamp Act. He was also famous for giving a speech and saying, "Give me liberty or give me death." George Washington was the leader of the Patriot forces and our first president. Benjamin Franklin was a colonial journalist, along with being a scientist, who helped write the Declaration of Independence and negotiate the end of the Revolutionary War. John Adams helped write the Declaration of Independence and was a member of the Sons of Liberty. Some other important people include Martha Washington, Abigail Adams, Paul Revere, and Crispus Attucks.
Summary time. In this documentary, we've covered women and children's roles in the war, important figures, and some things that happened in the war, along with some events leading up to it, and we covered how the original 13 colonies were founded. Thank you for watching.